Well, good afternoon, and thank you for visiting us on another episode of Monkman Talks. And I'm working on my How to Act series. And I have written a lot about how to act. I've been busy doing a lot of other things. And sometimes I'm just looking up at the sky, but I've been busy. And some of the stuff I've written on how to act that I'm not going to go over yet and it hasn't been posted yet, uh, for example, is like how to act and avoid killing, how to act and avoid sin, how to act and nullify evil, how to act and achieve peace through intelligence, how to act within the frame of natural law, how to act in an enlightened fashion, and even how to act and play great golf. So there's some things missing in the progression of this idea of how to act that you're not going to have access to yet because I haven't recorded it and posted it yet. I've written a lot, but I think it's important for me to uh, go ahead and introduce you to how to act and amend the Constitution. So far, this is the longest how to act episode I've written. I mean, I wrote it all pretty quickly, to be honest, and I just haven't really taken the time to clean it up and get it recorded. But it is pretty long. I'll probably end up doing it in maybe a couple videos. Is what I'm going to try to do. But part of what how to act and amend the Constitution is going to include is just a brief history of the United States of America and the founding and some of the actions that our founding fathers took and some of the actions that like even the King of England took and so there's a lot of different stuff that I'm going to talk about in that. But before I begin that, I'm gonna do a small introduction and so before you rededicate yourself to your course, slow down as much as you need to and stop for as long as you must. And make sure that you are prepared and are aiming in the right direction. The worst thing you could do is throw away an opportunity to rededicate yourself to the right course. Do you understand the consequences if you dedicate yourself to the wrong course? If you're not paddling your boat in the right direction, it does not matter how strong you are, and it does not matter how hard you work. If you only consider and move forward with the exact same mindset you had before you organized time to rededicate yourself, then you might find yourself carrying the same Republican ideals you had yesterday instead of the American ideals our founding fathers championed. You might find yourself supporting Americans killing people on the other side of the globe because they don't want to follow our laws. Americans don't attack every threat on Earth. Instead, Americans debate with ideas. Only as a last option do we go to war. And when we declared our independence, we didn't declare war. We declared independence in an intelligent manner, and it was England who declared war on us. And and so keep that in mind. Keep those American ideals in mind that we didn't declare war on England. We declared independence in an intelligent manner. All right. So before I discuss how to act and amend the Constitution, because I'm not going to jump straight into amending the Constitution, let's discuss how our Constitution came to exist and has been amended in the past. I am by no means a historian or constitutional scholar. I was born in the USA, ushered through a public education system, and consider myself a law abiding American citizen. Regardless of how Trump may change birthright citizenship laws or my community's warrant for my arrest. And I have a general exposure to these subjects, and you should do your own research. I'm happy to pair a general knowledge of any subject with my mastery of natural law and understanding of delusion, summarize my perspective, and declare myself right. But that does not mean you should assume I am right. Most of the general information I'll be using for this episode comes from the National Archives and Google searches. The French and Indian War began when the French built a chain of forts in the Ohio River Valley, a fertile valley inhabited largely by indigenous tribes. And the governor of Virginia believed that they needed to act to secure those lands for themselves, as they had planned and wanted. The governor gave George Washington orders to confront the French and attack them if they refused to pack up and leave. I believe the governor of Virginia should have thought more about what he was wanting to achieve and what the results of starting a war against the French and their tribal allies might be. Obviously, if you think the results of initiating such an experiment might result in catastrophe for you, your neighbors, and your government, then you should not experiment. As I understand it, attacking the French first was a violation of natural law because using force against the people who have outmaneuvered you was not a required action forced upon you. Again, I haven't posted how to act and within the frame of natural law. So that's something for you to consider, and I will post that eventually. But if you violate natural law in such a way, you should expect the results of the natural law equation to be volatile and therefore may not yield what you want. Realistically, if you violate natural law in your actions, you almost certainly will not yield what you wanted or thought would be the result. If people understood this before acting, they could think about how to achieve what they want and ensure they are abiding by natural law before they act. We all should consider how we approach what we want and ensure our approach does not violate natural law, or else the results will be volatile and corrupt. The governor of Virginia did not exercise this critical thinking process, and the results are our history. Great Britain and the colonies won the French and Indian War, but they would never recover. What is the point of initiating the act if you win the war, but yet you ultimately succumb from it? If you start a fight and win it, but then lose everything you were fighting for, it is proof that you did not achieve what you wanted. There is no arguing that your action achieved something, but the idea Britain and their colonies would attack the French, win, and prosper proved delusional. Britain won, but they incurred what proved to be an insurmountable debt. King George III and British Parliament believed they needed to act to resolve the debt and decided to collect more taxes from the colonists to pay it off. That action backfired on the British when the colonists protested the high taxes and reacted by dumping tons of British tea into the Boston Harbor, famously known as the Boston Tea Party. When natural law is violated and not corrected, a charged future variable will be naturally created to balance the equation. In this case, the Tea Party was that naturally created variable. The colonist reaction, Tea Party, should be considered a created result / future charged variable of the previous corruption of the previously corrupted natural law equation. Approach, action, and result from attacking the French when you did not have to. Britain's action created and charged a future variable whose effect would depend on the next action. In this case, a forced tea tax. King George III and British Parliament were not at all happy with the colonists' reactions after the Boston Tea Party. They deliberated on what to do next and ultimately chose to act by passing the Coercive Acts. The Coercive Acts were intended to force colonists to submit to British taxation and to enact justice for the Boston Tea Party. I put justice in quotations because the British wanted the colonists to pay for their reaction. The Boston Tea Party, which was a naturally created charged variable whose purpose was to balance the equation. The creation of the future charged variable, the Tea Party, was caused by the British violating natural law and thus naturally creating the charged future variable and reaction to balance nature. From my perspective, the British violated natural law, created problems, and then demanded the colonists pay for those problems. Parliament didn't understand natural law was going to create a charged future variable that could solve and balance the problems. Instead, they doubled down on creating unnatural problems. From my perspective, the British may have been insisting on war for the sake of indebting the colonists and enslaving them until their debt was paid off, which would be never. Imagine if the leader of your nation started a war and spent a bunch of money and then said that you and your children and your grandchildren would be on the hook to pay that money back, or else. expect before that war debt would be paid off by your grandchildren, your new leader would run the same play. Surely get your nation into another war, sacrifice your great grandchildren, and add additional debt to assert their power over whoever is left. This is not the vision of life on earth that God created for us. British Parliament acted the Boston Port Act and created a blockade of Boston's ports until debts were paid. Any person blocking you from your local natural resources and travelways as you pursue your happiness is unnatural. The Massachusetts Government Act took away the colonists' right to govern themselves, which is also unnatural. The Administration of Justice Act protected British royal officials from having to be tried by the colonies where they were accused of committing crimes, and it is unnatural and wrong to hide from true justice. Finally, the Quartering Act required colonists to provide supplies and housing to British troops, and it was unnatural to be forced to house and feed a stranger whom you may not want around your children. The coercive acts were intended to deter colonists from continuing tax protests and stop any further escalation. The acts imposed were unnatural, and so charged future variables will be created and volatile results should be expected. I don't know if British Parliament expected volatile results. I expect they believed their actions would ultimately yield what they wanted. From September to October 1774, the colonists formed the First Continental Congress. British Parliament had acted by passing several acts which aggressively opposed on the colonists' freedoms, and the colonists decided that they needed to protest further. Protest equals charged future variable. The colonists' reaction was not the effect British Parliament wanted or thought they would receive when they issued the coercive acts. British Parliament's acts were unnatural and caused unjust injury across the colonies and the colonists, creating charged future variables. At the First Continental Congress, the colonists reacted to Parliament's acts with thoughtful protest. They boycotted British goods and sent a formal petition to King George III, outlining the colony's grievances. The petition for balance would not be taken seriously by Britain. We were not demanding independence. We were saying, take your boot off our throat and we can be better subjects. And you really should go out and read the First Continental Congress petition to the king. I've read it a few places, and if I can get a recorded reading, I'm going to post it right here, right after I say you should do it. All right, and then there's the Lee Resolution. Go look that up. Go look what the Lee Resolution is. It's pretty small, but the more important one is the First Continental Congress petition to the king, and basically their requests for being treated as humans, as they had been treated before the war, were more or less ignored. So the truest form of our struggle was agreed to on Independence Day, July 4th, 1776. Right. The truest form of our struggle was agreed to on Independence Day, July 4th, 1776. Truest form. Human beings had been subjected to unnatural rules by other humans, and they wanted to change the rules and the government. Actually, they didn't just want to change the rules. They understood they were obligated by God and natural law to change the rules and balance the equation. They may not have recognized that their efforts were an attempt to balance an uneven equation, but that's the truth. The Founding Fathers, without consulting me or studying my How to Act series, ultimately decided on how to act next. They hit some of the notes of how to act on key, yet fumbled on other notes without understanding why, or even recognize that they were often out of tune. I'll acknowledge I have the benefit of studying 250 years of Americans. Like a centurion morning quarterback, I can describe how I observed their aim miss the target, or how they completely misread the play with no risk of fumbling myself. The Declaration of Independence was determined necessary after true and real grievances were ignored by British rules. Our founding fathers compiled a list of those grievances and identified the obvious reality. The Declaration of Independence described exactly why our founding fathers, after much thought, determined they had no other option but to illustrate how King George and British Parliament were tyrannical rulers who should no longer be allowed to govern themselves nor their neighbors. And we declared our independence. Could freedom and independence be the center of your existence? We declared our independence, or we discovered our independence. Consider that declaration does not mean a discovery as much as it means an acknowledgement of truth. As important as a Declaration of Independence is, it is still a declaration of something that already existed, an existing fact, an existing truth, though some may have been oblivious to its existence. Declaring that you have a nose does not change the fact that your nose existed before you could see it and before you could speak. Declaring women can have a bank account does not change the fact that a woman could manage a bank account before she was granted permission by men. Note the true similarities. We credit Thomas Jefferson for writing the Declaration of Independence and breaking the mass delusion that we should submit to British's tyrannical rule. We also credited Galileo Galilei with breaking the mass delusion by declaring the sun as the center of the solar system. Galileo Galilei looked up and discovered the truth and then declared that the sun is the center of the solar system, not the earth, and he shared his discovery with us. Galileo Galilei did not invent the solar system, and he did not place the sun in the center of the solar system. He merely identified what was already true and talked about that truth. Thomas Jefferson did not make us independent. When he wrote the Declaration of Independence, he did not invent independence, nor did he make man independent. He merely acknowledged an existing truth that men are independent. How to act is based largely on observational science, as is the Declaration of Independence. Galileo discovered existing truth by observing and thinking about his existing reality using the scientific method. Galileo did not prove the sun the center of the solar system because that's what he wanted to prove. He proved it was the center of the solar system because that's where thinking about his observations led him. Just as Galileo did not invent our solar system with the sun at its center, he only discovered the observable reality. Our founding fathers did not invent freedom with independence at its center. They discovered it. Oh man, I just get spam calls all day. All day. I'm sorry. I'm trying to sell a house, so I got this thing on in case it's important. Anyway, so where was I? He only discovered the observable reality. Our founding fathers did not invent freedom with independence at its center. They discovered it by thinking about their observations. Freedom and independence should be considered the yin and yang of the West. They are not opposites, but they balance and feed each other and should be at the center of our values. Imagine them as dance partners, and the faster this mechanism spins in balance, the stronger it becomes. Hold on to your butts. The day came where common man looked up and declared, "This is horse shit." Our founding fathers acknowledged our God-given freedom and declared our independence, which should never have been necessary to do. Because we are not born attached to the government, and because when we get sick, our king also did not suffer. It should have been obvious to all that we were and are independent creatures created by God to be independent. Because parliamentary leaders decided who gets to eat while also making sure they themselves never go without, that should be a clear indication that you are not them. You do not get to eat as good as them. You do not get to live as nice as them. They live by rules for thee, not for me, and you are not them. You are an independent person, and your best opportunity to live your best life requires your independence. When Parliament and the King do not feel your struggle, yet demand you continue producing for them, they clearly are independent of you. you are miserable and sick, working to pay taxes so they can maintain and grow their lifestyle so that they can live their best life. And that should be an obvious observation that they are not you and you are not them. And for you to live your best life, you need to declare your independence. After we declared our independence, we agreed on and wrote the Constitution that would govern the United States of America. The first agreed Constitution was ratified on March 1st, 1781, almost 5 years since our shared grievances were agreed on and independence declared on July 4th, 1776. So it took us 5 years after we declared our independence to form and agree on our Constitution. That Virgin Constitution was the first agreed version of our Founding Fathers' vision. So, Articles of Confederation and Perpetual Union reading. I'll do that and put that in there, and I'll also put the Declaration of Independence in there. Since the real need to declare our independence, leaders have changed the original inspired Constitution. Our most recent Constitution has been changed with amendments, aka the Bill of Rights, and since the founding of our nation, it is clear to me that the majority of our leaders' choices have been based on what they want and not what they think. I'll break apart some of the amendments to our Constitution and what I believe is correct. Remember, I am Centurion morning quarterbacking, looking back objectively. And I'm going to say that's it for this episode, because if I put in those readings, it's going to become very long. Well, thank you very much for sticking around, and I'm going to get the next part of this up, but I just, like I said, I expect the Declaration of Independence once I put that in there, and the other things that I want to read, I expect that's going to take some time. So thank you very much. And my tablet just fell.